All right, Fran Duffy, our all-city NFL expert, close to our hearts. We love the man. He is here to give us a little Senior Bowl preview for the Eagles, and he is on the scene. Bo and EJ Smith here, and we want to. It's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. The practices. We're recording this before the first day of practices, Fran, and I think we all agree from the Eagles' perspective. We want to focus offense to start here because they need to flip that side of the ball, get a little bit of an infusion of youth there. And there are four players on the rosters at the Senior Bowl who are in your top 50 on the Fran Duffy NFL Draft Guide, which you can read on allphly.com if you become a diehard. A little plug for you. On the offensive side of the ball, let's start with the three offensive linemen, and it begins with Arizona State's Max Iheanochor.
Very nice landing there on the name. Yeah, I would say Max Iheanochor is probably one of my favorite like high upside swings in this draft, regardless of position, and very much an Eagles type of profile. Born in Nigeria, moved to LA, moved to California just before high school. Basketball was his first love. He was a basketball player like all growing up, all through high school, didn't play football until he got to junior college. He went to Los Angeles College, and that's when he first put the pads on for the first time. So that first year in 2021, all right, like he's learning how to put on his cleats and put on his pads and all that. He's practicing, did not play in a game. Then he becomes a starter for the first time in 2022. Immediately a four-star recruit coming out of junior college. He had a bunch of big-time offers, ended up committing to Arizona State. Played mostly as a backup in 2023 for the Sun Devils, but then became a starter full-time in 2024. Did the same thing in 2025. He's a right tackle by trade. But guys, he is a ridiculous athlete. When you talk about like physical specimens, great athlete, very efficient out of his stance, explosive traits, 6'6", 325 pounds. I'm excited to get the official measurements from him here in Mobile. But if you're talking like, overall skill, like, yeah, like he needs technical refinement. There are things that he's got to have to work on. Still very green to the position. Only 3 years really of playing the sport. But if he comes down here and has a big week of practice, he's a guy I think you're going to start hearing about in the latter stages of round one, which is obviously where the Eagles are picking, because you're talking 6'6", 325 with unique athleticism. If he has a big week, that'll be big for his draft stock.
Now, Eagles fans will know this, but they have a track record of targeting what Jeff Stoutland would call unusual players, with elite athletic traits. And, I feel like the Eagles also just love a guy who got to football late, that development curve. So definitely a name that Eagles fans should keep an ay out for there.
And Fran has that tackle guard flex that you might want.
He's only played right tackle in games so far. And now the thing is that there's two ways to look at that, right? You could say like, oh, all right, well, he's only played tackle, but then there's the other part of it, like, yeah, he hasn't been asked to do anything else. And then there's also like this. We heard this with Jordan Mailata. It's like, all right, well, the fact that he hasn't played means he doesn't have a lot of bad habits. So now he's played more than Jordan did when he was coming out, when he came into the draft. But no, this kid, if he has a big week this week, like Lane Johnson was considered a second round pick before the Senior Bowl in 2013, and obviously became the fourth overall pick. I don't know, we're going to see that level of jump, but I do think you could hear more about this kid if he has a big week.
All right, the next two offensive linemen, and these guys are all sort of clumped together on your big board. Texas A&M's Dametrious Crownover and Georgia Tech's Keylan Rutledge. Tell us about those guys, and if you think either one of those guys could be kind of an Eagles-type player.
Yeah, Rutledge is a little bit tougher because I would say he is a guard only. Yeah, I don't think that you're going to see him move out to tackle, and he doesn't have any experience as a center. He played a little bit of tackle, but in college, but he has been primarily a guard throughout the course of his career, and really a right guard. And so, that lack of versatility, I think, could hurt him in the Eagles' eyes. That said, he's just a really good football player. He's really strong. He's powerful, and he is like tough as they come. Yeah, really, really nasty. A lot of really good finishes on tape. Was one of my favorite like players, like fun tapes to study over the course of the fall. Transferred from Middle Tennessee State, so he began his career there. Transferred up to Georgia Tech after the 2023 season. So played the last 2 years for the Ramblin' Wreck down there outside Atlanta. You go over to Dametrious Crownover. He's more of like a true tackle. He is 6'7", 336 pounds. I compared him to Patrick Paul, who was a second round pick a couple of years ago out of Houston for the Miami Dolphins, became a starter and had a good season by all accounts for the Dolphins this year. Things to clean up. He's a little bit late off the ball. His pad level's a little messy. His hand's a little messy, but he's tall, he's long, he's broad. He's got explosive traits. He's got power. Like there's a lot to like there. And he's got some tackle flex. So in terms of being able to play left or right side theoretically. So when I look at Crownover, He's a guy that I think more of pure tackle. I think when you're looking at Rutledge, more of a pure guard.
Okay, now let's talk tight end because we know that the Eagles. Actually, you know what? I have a question about the offensive line because I'm just thinking about this.
Yeah, save tight ends for me.
Uh, we've talked about the Jurgens decision the Eagles have to make, and it's likely they're going to pick it up. But as you're talking about a guard only, what do you think about the idea of just making Landon Dickerson the full-time center?
Yeah, I mean, it would go a little bit against obviously what
Of
Jeff
course.
has done, but I don't think that they'd be completely against it. It would eliminate like some of the, I don't think you're going to be using him as a puller the way that
Yeah,
we've
but they
seen.
weren't doing that last year anyway.
Well, that's the thing, and
Yeah.
obviously, I don't want to say it hamstrung them, but it
Yeah.
definitely limited, some of the versatility they had schematically. I think in a perfect world, you'd love to be able to have a little bit more mobility from the center spot, but Dickerson could do it for sure.
All right, go ahead, EJ.
So, Fran, going through some of the guys that you had listed here at the tight end position, I'm curious because you can almost break it into two different categories, like guys who would be potential Dallas Goedert replacements, high
Yeah.
volume pass catchers, and also, who doesn't love a dirty work tight end, a number two, a number three guy who can be an inline blocker. So, I guess in those two categories, who jumps out? I know you have Justin Jolie ranked highly. Do you view him as a viable, Dallas Goedert replacement, or do you think of him more maybe a little bit lower than that?
No, I do think that I had a higher grade on Goddard than I do right now on Justin Jolie. I was really high on Goddard when he was coming out of South Dakota State. It just
But
because
we should say Jolie is you're at the moment your number 22 overall player.
Yeah, I think that probably speaks to the level of the class
Okay.
overall. But I do think that Jolie, he's got the ability to be a three down presence. I do think that he is more pass catcher than blocker. I think he's competent enough as a blocker. Like we saw Zach Ertz be a three down player, here in Philly for a long time.
Yeah.
I think that's probably along the lines of what we're talking about as a blocker. Like can get the job done, but you're not like lining him up against defensive ends and running behind him the way that they have with Goddard. So you would need to bring in a really strong inline presence to kind of pair with him. The Brent Selleck to the Zach Ertz. So I do think that if you have Jolie, I think that would be kind of the plan there. That said, like this is a converted receiver. He was a big time receiver at the University of Connecticut, and kind of transitioned to tight end early on in his college career. Yeah, he's a really fun player. Like really good at the catch point, after the catch, the route running's there. He's competitive enough as a blocker. I don't think that he's like he's better than like Calcaterra as a blocker. Right? Like I don't think that he's that level. So I do think that there's enough that he can be a three down presence in the NFL.
Now, in that other category, talk to me about Tanner Koziol. I mean, what's it, 6'7", 250 pounds?
Yeah.
Interested in a Tanner Koziol.
Yeah, he's began his career in the MAC. He was at Ball State his first 3 years, and he honestly has been kind of just like a big slot receiver. Where like, all right, we're gonna line you up out wide, we're gonna line you up in the slot, and you are just too big and too athletic for people to kind of match up with you. And he's like a huge red zone weapon. 7 touchdowns as a freshman in 2022, 8 touchdowns in 2024. Goes to Houston, has a bunch of touchdowns down there for the Cougars this year in the Big 12. And so I think when you're looking at Koziol, he's been extremely productive. With that body type, you would say like, oh, like he can develop into a blocker. I think right now, like it's more like, he's fine, but not dominant. The guy that I compared him to is Colby Parkinson. Parkinson coming out of Stanford was kind of the same way. He was a mid-round pick who caught a lot of passes and was like a try-hard blocker, but you were like, all right, he has the frame to kind of grow into it. And that's what he's turned it. Like he turned into. It's funny. I was listening to the broadcast the other night, and Tom Brady kind of said, like, yeah, like when you're looking at Parkinson, he was more known as a blocker early in his career when he was in Seattle, and then has developed more into a pass catcher. I think that's kind of how I view Koziol, is that he's been more of a pass catcher in college. I think when he gets to the NFL, he's not going to be like this great separator, but he's going to need to be able to make it as a blocker. He's got the frame to grow into it. Now it's a matter of him just going out and kind of executing that plan.
And he's your tight end 4. Your tight end 3 is also there. That's Nate Borkircher from Texas A&M, who, without knowing anything about him, I say that he's a 6th-year senior. I'm a little bit worried.
Yeah, that's going to be the knock, is that he's a little bit older. 2020 was his first action at Nebraska. Now, here's the thing. There was the kid from Nebraska. There was Thomas Fedone last year, who was like a 5-star recruit at, he was a Nebraska kid, like homegrown 5-star, could have gone anywhere and stayed at Nebraska. So I think there was like some politics behind the scenes there in terms of like, all right, like he's going to be the starter and he's going to get a lot of the looks there at tight end. Honestly, when you look at Borkircher's box score, Another good. He had 6 catches in 2024. He had 5 in 2023. He had 6 in 2022. He was barely a factor. And then he transfers to Texas A&M for his 6th and final season. And he was a pretty big part of that passing game and did a little bit. And honestly, when I went back and watched his tape, it's like, I kind of like this kid. He's a good athlete. He's got explosive traits. He can get down the seam. He does enough as a blocker where I'm like, all right, like I'll trust him against most matchups against like linebackers and defensive backs. So if you want to take him and like kind of plop him into the Calcaterra role, I think he's a better blocker as like a complementary piece right now. I would say, you mentioned it, he's my tight end 3. I think in this class, you've got Kenyon Sadiq at the very top, first round pick. You've got Justin Jolie. We talked about like I think he's probably like probably more of like an early day 2 type of selection would be my guess. And then I think it's a clump of a bunch of other guys. And I think Borkature is at the top of that clump right now, where probably more backups like tight end 2, tight end 3 types, but there's a lot of those guys in this class.
All right, 2 more positions to ask about here quickly. It doesn't seem like the wide receiver group at the Senior Bowl is particularly loaded.
Yep.
It looks like the top ranked guy for you was your wide receiver 10. That's
Yep.
Georgia State's Ted Hurst. Does he have the kind of juice that you think could play in the Eagles offense right away?
Yeah, he's a certain kind of player, and that is he's 6'3", 195. He does have some juice. My comp for him right now is Michael Gallup, and Gallup when he was a mid-round pick coming out of Colorado State, went to the Cowboys. Outside the numbers, vertical player, and I think that's kind of what you're looking at with Hurst, in that he's really long, he's a long strider, a lot that he still needs to kind of work through from like a technique route running standpoint. He began his career at Valdosta State and then transferred up to Georgia State. Georgia State, guys, was terrible team. They won like 2 games the last 2 years, but he's been consistently productive. He had 71 catches, over 1,000 yards. He was the guy to stop in that offense, and no one could stop him. He high points the ball really well, proven commodity in the red zone, and he's got some field stretching ability. I think he's probably like early day 3 would be my guess. That guy, maybe he sneaks into the 3rd round if he tests really well at the combine. He has a big week down here. So I would say, of the guy, like a bunch of guys dropped out, unfortunately, for this game. Like Casey Concepcion was a player that was supposed to be down here. He's not here in Mobile now. Elijah Surratt, or the wide receiver from Indiana, a lot of people thought he would be here. He's not here. So a bunch of the big names dropped out, but Ted Hurst is probably the cream of the crop at this point.
All right, last one for you. If the Eagles pull a Jalen Hurts and draft let's say a day 2 quarterback. Let's say they need to replace Tanner McKee. They want that backup, keep their options open. Is there a guy in Mobile who you think would make sense as a potential day 2 selection for the Eagles?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, when I'm looking at this list, it would be Garrett Nussmeier, the quarterback from LSU. And this is a guy that was my QB1 entering the year. Did not have the season that he was anticipating, and a lot of that was due to injury. He was dealing with a core muscle, kind of like abdominal and like oblique type of issue throughout the course of the season. You can kind of see him working through it, and then they just kind of shut him down, especially once Brian Kelly got fired midseason. So Nussmeier, I think it's tough because he didn't become a starter until Jaden Daniels left. So it's really about a year and a half sample of him being the starting quarterback. Yeah, he threw a lot of interceptions like late in the middle of the field, like some bad decisions. And as a first year starter, so I'm like, all right, like you cut some of those out. What are we looking at here coming in? And he still had a couple of those early on in this season. Now, the offensive line, they turned over that entire group this year. It was bad. They still couldn't run the ball. Like it was a little bit of a stacked deck for him. And that's honestly a big reason why they made that coaching change. I'm going to be honest. I'm still leaving the door open. Now, the big thing is he's down here healthy, which is good. He didn't play in the back half of the season. Like I said, if he can go through the whole week healthy, that's going to be big. But honestly, so much of his draft slot is going to be determined by the medical check, and it's not the oblique stuff that I mentioned. There's been a lot of like talk about his knee and like long-term ramifications there. Brian Kelly said during the summer, like something. I think he might have used the word arthritic. I have it in my notes in the draft guide. Like it's like, all right,
arthritic.
Yeah, I think he might have used that twang on it when he said it. But I think I have it here: chronic patella tendonitis. So like, I'm not a doctor. I don't know what that means. So I'm going to wait till the medical checks happen.
With the chronic patella tendonitis.
I mean, look, I'll be interested to see what the ramifications are of that. There might be people might say like that's not a big deal. But like I said, like he reminds me of Tony Romo as a player. I think that he's got the NFL starting ability. We'll see. We'll see if he ends up being a day 2 guy or if he ends up falling to the early stages to day 3. I believe there's a piece up on allphly.com in the archives on Garrett Nussmeier and
that's right.
Rise as a prospect. So you can go check that out if you're a diehard as well.
All right. Well, that'll do it The Senior Bowl preview for the Eagles on offense, courtesy of the great Fran Duffy. Fran, we will talk to you on Wednesday and Thursday to get your thoughts on the first couple of days of Senior Bowl practice. Thanks so much, and enjoy the experience.
Appreciate it, guys.
See you soon. As always, we love you.